Greetings, I'm Dike Rostant. Welcome back to the TTT News. Dennis Franklin the Merchant, Leroy Calise, the Black Stallion, and so many other artists, academics, and dreamers have spoken to the power of a united Caribbean. It is time to go in-depth on the Institution of Fire Engineers, and more specifically, their Caribbean and South American body, with committee member and the chair, regional conferences, summits subcommittee, Samuel Wilson, and committee member and the chair, examination subcommittee, Deputy Chief William Penn. Greetings, thank you for joining us, gentlemen, and we want to start off asking the question that the Institution of Fire Engineers, or IFE, is global. But what is the vision and the mission of IFE CASA? And I think I'll ask you, please, Deputy Chief.
Yes, the vision. What do we see here in terms of the vision? That the entire region, including from South America as far north as Bermuda, we are one entity. And the mission is there, how can we come together to be a recognized locale in this whole diaspora of the Caribbean and South America region. In terms of the mission, how do we again bridge the gap between the practices that we do within the region? And IFE CASA has it as its fore in terms of the vision and the mission, and how do we bring the region together to be a force in a not distant future that we can begin to evolve and begin to produce not just standards, but a range or cadre of professionals across the region that begin to develop and advance our respective countries.
And thank you for that, Deputy Chief. And looking at building that cadre and being a force in the not too distant future, Mr. Wilson, tell us a little more about the values connected to the institution.
Right. So, as a regional body, there are many values that are very dear and close to us. Looking at transparency, inclusivity, we're looking at women and gender issues, and how we can bring that to the region, improving the relationships with existing bodies within the Caribbean region, and fostering growth and development of IFE CASA as one of the premier institutions, building the competencies of not just only the national fire departments, but also commercial and private fire brigades, as we would see like in Point Lisas and other applications.
And I want to continue on that point, please, Mr. Wilson, in terms of describing the process of creating those connections that would truly make IFE CASA a regional body, looking at all these individual organizations that would be under the umbrella of IFE CASA.
So IFE, the membership of IFE comprises of members throughout the entire region, from Jamaica, Cayman Islands, all the way to Trinidad, Guyana, Suriname. And based on the relationships that we have within the membership, many of them also members of other associations related to the fraternity, such as the Caribbean Association of Fire Chiefs, the Caribbean Association of Firefighters, and using those connections as well as the education fraternity as well, the University of the West Indies, and having those partnerships, that takes us way ahead in terms of IFE CASA being at the forefront within the Caribbean and providing advice, training, and other things as we'll get into a bit later.
And Deputy Chief, I want to continue this line of conversation with you because both you and Mr. Wilson have spoken about building competencies, building capacities. What are some of those things that IFE CASA would do to help ensure that competency is raised, capacity is raised throughout the region, throughout the diaspora?
So yes, sort of put it in context. So we recognize that engineering is a key component in how we build resilience within the region. And before I expand on that, just to quickly piggyback with regards to Samuel, we are as far south as Suriname and as far north as Bermuda. So resilience is key, being in the hurricane belt of the Caribbean, and secondly, the earthquake. So our building structures is critical in terms of how we will sustain and remain resilient. So therefore, building our human capital in the respective countries is critical. Hence, this way IFE CASA will play a very pivotal role in how we do that. One of the things is that we have a range of levels that the individual can be trained and developed to become a certified engineer. And once that is obtained, then we have capacity that we can deploy to support each other in times of disaster or from a standpoint of being proactive. And that's key, being proactive and ensure our structures and other infrastructures are designed, built to withstand the environment that we are living in the region. So therefore, we see this as crucial. So that's one element that IFE CASA is doing to ensure we can build regional capacity from a human resource standpoint.
And I want to get back into that as well, but before that, Mr. Wilson, building that capacity, building that competence, looking at the fact that you're raising these things within the diaspora, how much of that is in the human capital and how much of that is in the codes and the engineering aspects of things? Because building sustainably is one thing, but we realize that the times and climes are changing. Codes need to be evaluated and renewed. So how much attention is paid to what is put into individuals, the humans that go forward, these engineers? How much is put into the building codes that we're saying, okay, we need to build a little different because the Caribbean or the diaspora, the weather, the climate is changing on us?
Right. So basically, while there's lots of emphasis on human capacity development, in similar manner with climate change and those various factors impacting us within the region, we are also seeking as an organization to contribute to the various governments in terms of building codes and different white papers that we can have inputs in, and thus have the influence within these circles and these governments, to have that catalyst or create that change that is necessary so that the right improvements that are made to the legislation, and not just the right improvements, but the enforcement of the legislation would be there so that buildings can be constructed in the right manner, using the right materials that are sustainable and environmentally friendly.
And thank you for that, Samuel Wilson. We're also speaking with Deputy Chief William Penn about the Institution of Fire Engineers, CASA, the Caribbean and South American branch. We continue the conversation and we will be speaking about some of the specific achievements of IFE when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are going in depth on the work of the Institution of Fire Engineers, the Caribbean and South American branch. We're doing so with Samuel Wilson and Deputy Chief William Penn. Now, Mr. Wilson, what are some of those achievements that IFE is saying, yes, these are things that we are responsible for, these are things that we are proud of?
So at IFE, CASA, we had several symposiums. We had several webinars where we are bringing information to the public about safe practices, about fire, about various topics. And we have lots more of those planned for 2022. And part of our strategic plan. We have conferences and various other things like that to sensitize the public and to also have meetings with the various other stakeholders. So the various groups like such as the energy chambers and other influencers, whereby we can have the word spread to a vast audience.
All right, and in terms of doing that work, Deputy Chief, there's a saying that too many cooks spoil the broth. So take me through the process of saying, okay, well, this is an idea, and having the membership or the stakeholders of IFE CASA say, okay, well, we are going to run with it, and then go through things. So what is that implementation process like?
Yes, for one example, and Samuel would allude to, for instance, codes. Now, based on each country geographical location, if I use the Virgin Islands, for example, British Virgin Islands, for example, we are close to the US Virgin Islands and also North America, so it's highly influenced. And we may use the NFPA standard, and a range of other countries within the region may do that. Also, again, from being a member of the Commonwealth, some may use the British standard specifications in terms of fire code. And yet again, some may use the Australian standards. So what do we see in terms of building regional capacity? In each of those, then we will need to develop and have standards. And IFE CASA is hoping that we can have regional standards that guide a single page that we all sing from the single sheet, and the standards that meet the resilience, standard that meet good practices, standard that keep our community and our citizenry safe. We can have a regional standard that we all can look to and use to have the efficient and effective way of managing our infrastructure development and our long-term future development as a region, and having the professional to ensure we are doing so. And all, at the same time as well, we have counterpart that we can dialogue with for guidance and direction. In other words, then, the European model may assist in many ways, but again, the environment is slightly different. So every aspect of the engineering practices may not suit within the region. And I can recall some years back where the Grenadian engineers have developed using the spices and how does the spice can be used to run the boilers. That's a perfect example in how we can be creative in the region. Therefore, having a regional standard that we all can look to that meet internationally recognizing credential that can become a model as well for the world. That's the goal of IFE CASA. How do we develop the resources, human resources in the region, and how they in turn begin to look at being creative, bringing policies and procedures that help us to be more resilient, more energy efficient, and having smart buildings and et cetera, roads and et cetera. So that is a goal of IFE CASA, and I think that is something attainable. But we have to invest and develop our human capital within the region to ensure we attain that.
And I want to stay with you for that though, please, Deputy Chief, because I love the example of that in-house developing research and development that you just cited from Grenada. But some persons, they are of the mindset that if this person didn't go abroad and study, they're not worth anything, and we should get someone else. But so how do you treat with that in your training and examinations, be it home or abroad, for IFE CASA?
First and foremost is to develop your human resources. Once they are developed and they begin to research and publish documentation, public standard, publish procedures, and when they come to test of times, that in itself would be the facts and the evidence to prove that we have capacity, we have skill equally across the world, right? Again, it fit right into our mission and our vision. We just have to create the blueprints that speaks to what those standards are. And over time, those standards will prove themselves through the various disasters that may confront us from time to time, whether it's hurricane, whether it's fire, whether it's earthquake, and the list goes on. We are mindful of those things. We just have not to do some research and development by having professionals to bring out policies, procedures, rules, regulation, and that will assist us, and that goal will be attained in due course.
Thank you so much. And we have about 3 minutes, and Mr. Wilson, I do not want you to rush this. So what is new in terms of regional goals? What are some of the things that IFE CASA has on the horizon that people should be mindful of? And how do people engage with you? What's that contact information like?
All right. So IFE CASA, we have embarked, especially my committee, we have embarked on focusing on conferences and exhibitions and stuff like that. So we would be participating in the International Oil and Gas Conference in Guyana. That will be held at the Marriott on the 15th to the 18th of February. We will be participating on many other conferences in Suriname. Then later on during the course of the year, the Guyana Basins Summit, even in Trinidad, Trinidad's Energy Chamber Conference. We have our annual conference being planned to sensitize the public in terms of our information. We have those webinars and seminars that we would have that are open to the public. And the public can find us on Facebook or at LinkedIn at IFE CASA. So if you search at IFE CASA or hashtag IFE CASA, you would find us there. And this is just the start of a number of initiatives for the region. We are still meeting with the various stakeholders, meeting with different players, different governments, private sector, public sector groupings. And this way we can really have that paradigm shift in terms of the workforce capacity development and also the sensitization to the public in terms of the right risk mitigation practices just for your own homes. Because simple thing as within your home, where you store your gas cylinders, right? And people put them in a cupboard and have it closed up with no ventilation, and it have a little trickle leak, and that vent in there, and you open that cabinet, and you're suddenly engulfed or overwhelmed by that vapor. So there are many little public presentations that we have planned and lined up. You'll see more about it on our social media platforms. So follow us again at IFE CASA on LinkedIn and Facebook.
And definitely this is something that I am going to do personally, because little things lead to big things. And we want to thank you, gentlemen, both you, Samuel Wilson, as well as Deputy Chief William Penn, for sharing with us about the Institution of Fire Engineers, the Caribbean and South American branch. And we want to thank you on behalf of the entire TTT News team for joining us. This has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you for tuning in.